All right, so now that we've done cellular respiration, we're going to move on to photosynthesis. And photosynthesis, to be put simply, is cell resp in reverse. And what cell respiration does is produce energy for plants, and they do that through absorbing water. Still see water and CO2, so opposite of humans, as we would release CO2 and breathe in oxygen, and light from the sun, more specifically the photons. And this will give us energy and oxygen. So, how do plants absorb water, CO2, and light? So, there's three main parts we're going to look at. Well, I say we'll look at, but I don't think we'll spend too much time on how we absorb water through the roots, which is the xylem. And CO2 is absorbed by the stroma. And then light, which is photons from the sun, is absorbed and turned into energy through the chloroplast. I don't think that's stomata. Sorry, yes. CO2 is through the stomata in the leaves. So now we understand how all this is absorbed. We can look more closely into the structure of the chloroplast, is what we'll go into. But before that, it's important to note that there's two different ways photosynthesis can occur, which is through light dependent reaction or light independent. Or same thing. Light independent reaction. This is also known as the Calvin cycle. So as I was saying, how is the structure of a chloroplast important? Well, inside of a chloroplast, contrary to what we might have learned in grade 9 or 10, it's not just a bunch of chlorophyll packed inside of a membrane. It's not like a sac. So instead, we have, maybe we'll use a bigger, so we have our chloroplast here. And inside, we have little ring shapes. I suppose in real life, they're more like blood cells, but how I'm drawing them, they look like rings. And each one of these individual rings that I'm drawing are called thylakoids. And this is where the magic happens. So inside of the thylakoid, we have the lumen. So maybe I'll highlight inside. Lumen. And then one ring is thylakoid. I'll is just all the intracellular space. This is the stroma, which I confused with stomata earlier. But then we also have the entire section of thylakoids when they're all bunched up together in these kind of tower shapes. That is called the grana. So what happens is light energy, photons, will enter from the sun into the leaf and then into the chloroplast and enter the thylakoids. And in a later video, I'll go deeper into what happens in the thylakoid. But for now, that's the basis of photosynthesis. So just to go over what we talked about in this video. Photosynthesis is cell respiration in reverse. Water, CO2, and light are used to produce usable energy for the plant, so it's food, and the plant will release oxygen. Water is absorbed through the xylem and the roots. CO2 is absorbed through the stomata, also where oxygen is released. The chloroplast is how light is absorbed. And then here, let's write a little. Here we have our chloroplast with the lumen, which is inside of the thylakoid. Thylakoid are each of the individual rings. Stroma is the fluid inside of the chloroplast but outside of the thylakoid. And the grana is these stacks of thylakoids. And one last thing, there's two different kinds of photosynthesis, light dependent and light independent. Light independent is known as the Calvin cycle.